Okay, we're live for another Tech Talk. Today we are talking about something in Canvas that I don't think very many people are aware of or ever use, but I think they've got some interesting use cases. So Melanie, you're gonna show us some examples of student editable pages in Canvas.
That's right. Yeah, so I think we're mostly familiar with using Canvas pages to convey content to students. So we put text, images, links, videos on these pages, but we can also use these pages to allow students to be a bit more collaborative and to contribute content as well. And so that's what we're going to look at today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll look at some examples. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is just, let's take a look at how we can enable pages to be editable by students. So I'm just going to go, I've got this demo module created. I'm going to go in and add a page to it. And I'll create a new page and we'll call it Tech Talk for this example. Okay, so I'm going to open this page. And I'm going to go to edit. And then of course, this is the area where we're used to adding all of our content. But if I scroll down below that, I have this option and allow users allowed to edit this page. So if it's left here as only teachers, then that means just the instructor is going to be able to edit that page and add that content. But there's some other choices. So I can choose teachers and students. And that will allow students in the course to also edit the page. If I choose anyone, that would be people in the course who have a role other than students and teachers. So perhaps an observer or a TA, although the TA role as it's set already has permissions.
Right?
Yeah. But there are some other roles that may or may not be in someone's course that don't have those privileges already set. In that case, those people would be able to edit the pages. If the course is public and I choose anyone, that does not mean that people outside the class can edit it.
They have to be somebody who's enrolled in the class with some role.
Yes, some designation in that class. Yep. So if we want students to be able to edit that page, we can choose teachers and students. And then if it's a task that we want students to complete by a certain time, we can add a due date. And so for example, we can have this due tomorrow at 11:59. And if I want to publish it at a later date, I can also add a publish at date, and then the page will publish at that specified date and time. So if I save this now, that due date will show up on the student's to-do list and also in the calendar.
And also under the page in the modules.
Yes, good point. Yep, it'll show up on that page itself.
And then by doing that, now anytime a student clicks on that page, they also have the edit button, just like the instructors normally do on a page.
Yes. So if I were to publish that page we just created, student view. If I go in there as a student, I can click edit and I can edit that page just as an instructor would.
Looks like you have all the same editing functions, images, links, videos, text, whatever you want to do.
Absolutely.
As a student, you can do that.
Yep, absolutely.
So the setting on it is super simple. It's literally just one little setting. I think though that people have never thought about doing this or why you would ever want to do that. So you've got what I think are some really cool examples and use cases for doing this.
Let's take a look. So yeah, we brainstormed some potential use cases. You know, why an instructor might want to set these pages to be edited by their students. And so these are some basic examples we came up with. Oh, I'm going to leave student view for now. So one simple idea would be as a sign-up sheet. So I'm going to show this example. And in this case, this would be an instructor who has created a sign-up sheet that students could choose a time to meet with that instructor. And so I'll talk about the part in yellow in a minute, but first, so there's different ways you can design this sheet. So this would be just a really basic list style where students could go in and edit and put their name next to the time that works for them. You could also get a little fancier and do it as a table format, right? So you can play around with the page. to kind of do what works for you. But one thing that we think is important if you're going to create a page that's editable by students is to be really clear in your instructions. In most cases, students are not accustomed to going in and editing pages. So you want to let them know that this is a little different, provide some instruction on what it is that they need to do. You know, maybe alert them to the fact that they don't want to delete or change somebody else's contribution.
So I mean, that's really all there is to it for an activity or a page like this. But I think that there are some potential benefits here compared to, because there's other ways you could do this, right? You could use Calendly or Microsoft Bookings or the Zoom integration or an email thing. There's all these other ways you could set up a sign-up sheet or a scheduling thing like this. But all of them require all these extra steps, right? You have to leave Canvas, you have to log into something. This is super immediate. It's available right there at the top of the module. They don't have to log into anything. They don't have to create any accounts. They just click edit and they do their thing. So in some ways, it's extremely low tech, low barrier. And for certain activities, I think there's a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's really nice that it can be embedded right into that module. Right. So we'll take a look at another example. So that's our sign up sheet example. This next example is an annotated bibliography where different students are contributing to it. And so one of the things we've done for this example is we kind of flagged it at the beginning in the title as contribute. So that again, because it is a page and students may not think that it's something that they are going to need to do, just some sort of indicator to let them know to contribute. Also, you can see there's a due date put on here. So February 16th. And so I'm going to click here and let's take a look at the annotated bibliography. So once again, including really clear instructions at the top of what the student is expected to do and how they would do it by going into the edit, cautioning them against or cautioning them about potentially editing or deleting somebody else's posts.
Mm-hmm.
And then here you can see that I've contributed, Caleb has contributed, and Sketch in this case has contributed to this annotated bibliography. And one thing I want to show while we're here, something that's really nice about pages, and whether they're editable by students and others or just the instructor, you can always see a version history. And so I'm going to go here and click on the 3 vertical dots, and I'm going to click view page history. And now I can see who has edited this page and when they did that. And so if, for example, Sketch came in here and deleted Caleb's post, right, we can go back to an earlier version and we can see these other posts and these changes. So when you look back at different versions, the changes aren't necessarily highlighted or pointed out, but you have to compare the differences. So how is it different from the earlier version to the next version, and you can start to see the changes over time. We can also go back and restore to an earlier version.
And when you restore an earlier version, the latest revision is still retained, so it doesn't disappear or anything. So I think this is super helpful because it provides a layer of accountability in a couple ways. One, I can see who has contributed and who hasn't.
Yes.
So if it's an assignment, you're saying, I want everybody to put an entry on this annotated bibliography. I can see at a glance who has done that, which makes it easy. But also the accountability of either accidental or intentional meddling or vandalism or something to the page. If I accidentally delete your annotated bibliography, you as the instructor can always go back in and see, oh, yep, I see when this happened and I can fix it and it's not gone. I restore the previous version and we're all good. So I think that's that I think answers a lot of the potential concerns that people might have about doing something like this with the student editing pages, as you have these safety mechanisms built into it.
Absolutely, yeah. So no change is ever permanent. We can always go back and see what it looked like earlier. I guess the other point thinking about an annotated bibliography is an assignment like this might be something that an instructor wants to grade. Pages aren't necessarily created to be graded in that that any changes that are made to these pages, this isn't gonna show up in SpeedGrader. So you can't just go into SpeedGrader and flip through and see what each student has done differently. So you're gonna kind of have to build that into your workflow if you wanted to grade contributions to an editable page. So in this case, the instructions were clear that the students, when they add their contributions, to put their name with it. Now, of course, as we just showed, we can see it in the version history. So if a name's not there, it's not the end of the world, but it would be much quicker for an instructor to be able to look through if the name is sort of in line with all of the contributions. The other consideration, if you're grading something like this, would be where do you put the grade? Because this page isn't going to go into the grade book. So in this example, we then created a non-submission assignment that could go along with it. So in this case, the student wouldn't submit anything to this particular assignment, but then it would go into the grade book with the same name as the page, and an instructor could put a grade in there that way.
So just pausing for a second, an annotated bibliography activity like this, you could do this in different ways, right? You could have done this as a discussion forum where everybody makes a post and the post of their contribution, or a assignment where they're just submitting it to you and then you're collating or curating this stuff. And those all have pros and cons for sure. The pros are it goes directly into the gradebook and you can grade it directly. It's a workflow that students are more used to seeing in Canvas. But doing it this way has a couple other pros that I kind of like. I like, again, how immediate it is. It's all on one page, and especially for like a crowdsourced contribution activity like this, the finished product is just right there. It's once everybody has done it, you have the page that is the annotated bibliography for that activity. Whereas in a discussion forum, you just have post after post after post. You have to scroll through and look at them. It doesn't carry over to the next quarter. So another benefit here is if my students came up with a really great artifact, I might want to share that with next quarter's class.
That's a great point, yeah.
Just copy that page over along with the rest of the course and it's all retained. I've got a question couple questions in the chat. Jennifer says, how easy would it for students to print once it's published? Thinking of a collaborative study guide. That's a great idea. And pages in Canvas are pretty printer friendly. I'm pretty sure you can just print it right off. I guess I haven't tried it, so I don't know if it's also going to print off the nav bar on the side or if it's just going to print the content of the page.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, but either way, it's pretty printer friendly. Even if it did still have the nav bar on the side, I don't think that's a big deal.
I don't think it will have the nav bar on the side, but I can't say.
Yeah, you'd have to try that out. But I like that idea of we are going to all contribute to a study guide, and then I recommend that you print it off and keep it with you. That's a great idea. And then Angela says, does Canvas allow for comments or questions rather than contributions? Something closer to a Google Doc or something like Perusall. So I mean, you and your students can do anything that they want on the page that can be done on a page. So yes, you could have a pre-filled document or an article or something that you turn into a page, and then the student assignment is to add annotations or add notes in there. And tell them, put a note in here, highlight it so that I know that this is your contribution, and do it that way. You could absolutely do something like that if you wanted to.
Okay. So let's take a look at another example. So this next example is the wisdom wall, kind of drawing from Michelle Pacansky-Brock's work. And she likes to use a wisdom wall in her courses as a tool for showing, just lost my mind explaining this. Okay, so sorry.
Yeah, so the way that she uses a wisdom wall.
Growth mindset, thank you.
Yeah, growth mindset. In the liquid syllabus format of creating a syllabus that is available outside of your LMS, she does this thing called a wisdom wall where at the end of a class, end of a term, she asks her students to tell her something like, what is one thing you wish you knew at the start of class, one thing you learned, one thing you want next quarter's students to know about this class, or however you structure that question. And then she curates them into what she calls a wisdom wall, which is a document or a page showing each of those students' comments And then that's what you share with the following quarter's students at the start of the class, saying, hey, the previous students in this class, they've given something to you. This is their gift from them to you. What they wish they had known at the start of the class, they're giving it to you and giving you that advantage.
Yes. So in this example, you know, perhaps you put out a prompt, how are you feeling at the start of this class? What do you know now that you wish you knew then? And open it up to student contributions. And as Caleb mentioned, you know, students at the end of the quarter then are able to see how they've grown through the quarter, and then students in the future can look back and say, wow, those students were in the same shoes I'm in now and they succeeded and got through. So yeah, that might be a nice way to again sort of give students the freedom to express themselves.
And again, you could do this in other formats for sure. I think generally when people do a wisdom wall, either they do it as some kind of reflection assignment, and then as the instructor, they go in and curate all those comments and make a page themselves. Or maybe they use a Google Doc or something like that. But again, doing it this way kind of has some advantages. It's super simple, doesn't require a lot of extra work on the student's part to get to it. And what I like is it creates an artifact that can be copied over into the next term's class. Yeah, I think that there are some benefits to doing it this way for sure.
Yeah.
And then Jennifer asked, because it's a typical page in Canvas, it can be read by a screen reader, correct?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. It's screen reader friendly, that little immersive reader tool that's at the top of each page that students have access to, it works with that. It's as accessible as any other Canvas page, so that's definitely a benefit compared to, say, a Google Doc, which is not so screen reader friendly. So that's a great point.
And so another example here is you could create a module all on its own and create a page for each student in your course. So as an instructor, you would have to build the initial page. Then you could leave it open for students to have their own page in your course. It could be used for reflections. It could be used, they could continue to add blog posts throughout the quarter. Maybe just as a page for their own personal notes, things that stand out to them in the class, links they want to be able to get to quickly, notes about the progress they're making, where they left off on an assignment.
Or just like a personal mood board and you know, put a picture of yourself if you want, a picture of your pets to show off to your classmates.
Yeah.
Your favorite song, a video that you like, some meme images, just use it as kind of a blog
Way
area.
to connect with each other.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there for others to get to know you. Which I think is kind of a fun idea, just to give students just a space in your course that's just dedicated for them to do what they want with, if they want to. So that's, you know, another example. Let's see. And then we've got one final example in here, which is an image repository. So in this case, you know, providing students a space to upload images about a certain topic. In this case, students might upload images showing different examples of slope failure in their neighborhood or preventative measures or whatever the case may be. And Caleb and I chatted about this example a little bit and kind of going through what would be the advantages or disadvantages compared to doing this in a discussion, because certainly you could do that. And I think this kind of thing would work really well if you just want to be able to see all of the images in one simple place to be able to sort of compare and contrast to each other, as opposed to a discussion, but you could certainly do that there as well.
Yeah, well, you could, but it's not as easy in a discussion, because again, you have to scroll through everyone's post. You might have to click on each post to see the whole image and load it up, whereas this is a super immediate and accessible image gallery.
Mhm.
And again, for something like this, being able to kind of crowdsource that information, maybe you have a botany class and you want to tell your students, take a picture of a plant or a tree in your neighborhood and identify it and put it in here. The botany instructors, they often struggle to have a good repository of images because every plant's different, right? They're not identical, there's little variations, but if you can say, here are 5 different oak trees, see how they're similar, see the common features, but also they're a little bit different because they grow in different places. Something like this is a great way to feature that kind of crowdsourced work. And again, being able to share that over to the next term, you can start building up a repository over time.
Yeah.
Comment in the chat, individual pages for students seems a little quote unquote dangerous, high volume of instructor presence to monitor appropriate content. That's true. That's true. It is, you're giving your students a certain amount of freedom and a certain amount of trust there, and that probably is going to require some extra attention and moderation. I don't know that it's appropriate in every single class, but I think there could be cases where it would be helpful. Maybe an art or graphic design class where you want students to start building out a portfolio. Again, they could do it in Google Sites or something else, but this is a super simple, low barrier way to just share your work in there. But yes, you would, if you do this, you would want to have some guardrails and you would want to explain, I only want you to modify your own page. Understand that everyone else can see your page and what you put on there. If there's ever a problem, contact me immediately and we'll deal with it. Again, having the safety mechanisms of the revision history, you can always go back and restore a previous version, and you can always see who made an edit. I think that limits the potential for mischief. But it's a good point that you wouldn't just set it and forget it. You wouldn't walk away from this and ignore it.
No, yeah, I think you definitely want to, with your class, talk through some ground rules. Yeah, let's see, we have another comment. I thought there was one.
Oh, Jennifer knows the answers to those images. Angela says, it's a great tool for student and faculty collaboration, building co-designed assessments and rubrics, or increasing engagement for course syllabi by asking students to post questions and comments. Yeah, that's another great idea of, maybe you have a couple of policies in your class that you want your students to contribute to or edit, and you might, I don't think I would make my entire syllabus student editable. That sounds like maybe a bad idea, but I might have a couple of policies that are separated from the main document and say, for my classroom cell phone policy, or my late work policy, or my communication policy, I want your input. Feel free to get in here and make some suggestions, and we're going to synthesize those suggestions into some kind of consensus policy. I think that's a great idea. And Ben says, it gives students a greater sense of publication and incentivizes motivation to do stellar work. Different than another discussion board prompt. Could also be used as a portfolio, summative project, sharing, etc. Yeah, that's a good point about that idea of it is different than a discussion board prompt. I think one of the challenges of discussion boards is they feel like busy work, they feel ephemeral, contrived. They feel like you do it and you walk away from it and you forget about it, you ignore it. This is a little different because it feels more like a static product that is being co-created. And I think there's some value there for sure. Great.
Okay.
Well, we got a couple more minutes if there are any other questions, or if this is prompting any other ideas that might make sense in your content area.
Yeah.
Feel free to share. While you do that, I'm just going to check the YouTube chat. Nothing on there.
Or if anyone has done this in their courses,
yeah,
I would love to hear
absolutely
how that went, in what ways it was used.
And then also, before people start disappearing in the chat, I just put a link to our feedback form. If you want to fill that out and let us know how you felt about this session, that helps us plan for future Tech Talks. Well, Melanie, I think that was really great. I really liked all those different examples. I think I can tell that like the gears are turning with some of the people here of like, oh, I could see some different ways to use this. It's an interesting technique that I don't think a lot of people have used. So
yeah, I agree.
Very
I think
cool.
it could be a lot of fun.
Well, I guess we are out of time. So we'll see you all next week for another Tech Talk. I think next week is making feedback and grading more streamlined and productive and saving time. I think I'm going to do my best to deliver on that promise. So hopefully we'll have some useful ideas and tools and techniques for that one. Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. And stream has ended.